We have to talk now about Boeing. New worries this morning for one of Boeing's most popular jets. The FAA is ordering inspections on hundreds of 737s over concerns that parts of their wings could crack. Not something you want to hear as an air traveler. Yahoo Finance's Alexis Keenan is here. Hi, Alexis.
Hi.
Now, is this the 737 MAX 8? I want to ask that right off the bat.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. You want to take a look at the numbers first?
Please.
Okay, here's how many planes are affected by this thing. So first we have worldwide. These are a mix of 737 MAX 8 aircraft as well as the NG. Now that's the 737 predecessor to the MAX family. So we have 312 worldwide, 65 in the US. In the US, that breaks down to 35 of the MAX and 32 of the NG. So over 300 aircraft. Comprehensively, we're talking about quite a bit more, perhaps. I spent some time on the phone this morning with a pilot that says he definitely thinks there'll be more than this.
Now, the 30 or so that are MAX 8 jets, those are grounded right now anyway.
Right. Those are on the ground.
Okay.
And this will mean more groundings because in order to fix this, they have to stay idle. About 3 days at a very minimum to make this change.
So I can't help but ask, is this a concealed effort on the part of Boeing? And now, in light of all of this negative news, now we do a bit more digging and this kind of stuff comes out? Or would this independently be a newsworthy story?
So I'm told that this is probably independent. This is a completely separate issue than the AOA sensors that we were talking about.
Bad timing,
but it does involve lift and it does involve the wing, particularly what this piece of equipment is. It's called a leading edge slat tracks. They're on both sides of the aircraft. And if you've ever looked out when you're about to take off, there's a cavity and there's a wheel inside a track and it pushes out the flaps in order to gain lift at a low speed. So the pilot that I spoke with, he said that, while the FAA is saying that this is not necessarily something that would cause a loss of a plane, that's what the FAA is saying. He said, no, this is really a necessary and critical component because it controls the plane at these slow speeds.
I'm wondering if this is something you discussed, with your pilot source earlier this morning, because it came up briefly in that New York Times article over the weekend. And I know it keeps coming up a little bit, but not fully, which is the engine is too big on the 737 MAX. Like for the size of the plane and for the amount of thrust that it can create, it's too large for the aircraft. Is this related to like the weight of the engine and where it's seated, where it sits on that wing, kind of dragging it down, or is this kind of unrelated to that?
It sounds like it's unrelated. So like the AOA sensor and the problem on the MAX 8s of moving those engines forward and giving it that tilt that was unexpected and perhaps the pilots could not control in those two crashes with Ethiopian and Lion Air, looks like it's unrelated at this point. And this is Boeing telling the FAA that they've identified this problem. And there are 10 days that the operators at the airlines have to actually fix this once they've identified that it exists in their aircraft. And the wheel, the FAA has not been totally particular, nor has Boeing, about where the cracks lie, but it's inside this wheel component, and so that has to all be retrofitted.
I don't want them anywhere.
Right. Well, it just kind of feels like, and it came up again in that Time story about how everything at Boeing is so siloed, or at least as they reported it, right? Like the wing people aren't talking to the engine people, who aren't talking to the flap people, who aren't talking to the fuselage people. It seems like this issue came up because the person building the tip of the wing didn't know what was going on.
Right,
they don't even know who makes the lift thing, right?
Right, yeah, and that's definitely, that critique came up in that New York Times article, and then you add that to, the relationship between the FAA and Boeing that has been highly criticized as being just too cozy, that the FAA really needs to be more of a regulator and less of a friend and handholder to the, Boeing or any other manufacturer.
For the moment, more than 300 planes affected, just in the big scheme of things, and I'm not mitigating this story, which is alarming, but is that a big number? I mean, we're talking about, in context, is that a small or big number?
So there are
planes?
Over 7,000 of these planes, these predecessor NGs in service. And as we know, there are about 5,000 plus sitting on the ground of the MAX that have not been able to fly and or be delivered. So, it's a fair number of aircraft, though, for airlines, because if it hits you as an airline, you've got to keep that plane on the ground and thus not, keep your revenue sources going.
All right, Alexis, thanks so much.
Yeah, we'll aviation expert Alexis.
I'm trying.